My name is Bettina Chang. I am co-founder at City Bureau. And City Bureau is a journalism lab based in Chicago, right now in Bronxville. In fact, I'm at the office right now saying hey to y'all, and hopefully opening up the office at some point so folks can come visit us soon this year. It's been tough to have folks over, but we can't wait to open up the office for everyone. So just to give everybody a little bit of information about City Bureau and the public newsroom. So what we're trying to do here is reimagine what local media looks like in the city of Chicago, right? So City Bureau runs 3 programs, including this one, the public newsroom. In particular, the public newsroom is a monthly public event that we host in order for us to discuss, debate, and dissect issues in the news. Talk about, what do we like about the way that it's told? What would we love to change? And how do we, build power, community power, to be able to change narratives in a way that really centers the folks who are most impacted by the issues that are happening in this city. And what a great way to kick off this year with our amazing Stop General Iron organizers and hunger strikers. Really, really excited to hear from each and every one of them today, and also to be able to run an activity with all of you where we're going to be thinking through what are sources of pollution in your community that you want to do something about, and what can you do about that. So that's the agenda for today, and I am really excited to also say that if you need a live transcription, we have transcription available. So just go to the bottom of your Zoom bar and enable the transcript, and you'll be able to see captions. We also have a Spanish translation available. So if you prefer Spanish, at the bottom of the bar, there is also a little globe button that says interpretation. So go ahead and click on that and select Spanish, and you'll be able to hear our amazing interpreters, Irene and also Hannah, who are going to be switching off back and forth to make sure that everything is going to be available to folks who prefer Spanish tonight. So thank you so much for the folks who are here. And thank you, Irene and Hannah, for making that possible. All right, so I think that is the housekeeping for tonight. I just want to mention, if you are interested or excited about this event, City Bureau does do this every month. So please follow us on the socials, please sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get to find out immediately when we have our next event up. In fact, if you care a lot about development and how do developments get made in the city of Chicago, the next event next month is actually about that as well. So it'll be a good one. We'll talk a little bit about General Iron, not as much as today, obviously, but it is a complicated process, and I'm sure a lot of the folks in the room have dealt with each step of that process. All right, one more disclaimer before we get started. I just want y'all to know that we are live on Facebook. So hi, Facebook audience. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll try our best to keep an eye on the chat there as well. So if you want to add your icebreaker answer, why are you joining us tonight? We'll take a look at that, and we'll also take your questions when the time comes. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Olivia Stovacek, an amazing reporter who was team leader for our fellowship reporting team this summer, who spoke with all these amazing organizers and hunger strikers. So Olivia, take it away.
Hey y'all, I'm Olivia. I use she, her pronouns. I am very excited to be here with all of you tonight to talk about environmental justice and community resistance. Kind of setting the stage for the panel a little bit. We know that Chicago's Black and Brown communities have faced a long history of industrial pollution and inequitable development, and that the history of people resisting that is just as long. So tonight we'll be reflecting on how Southeast Siders have come together to build power and fight a polluter from coming to their neighborhood in the Stop General Iron campaign. It's been almost exactly a year since members of the coalition first began a hunger strike as part of the campaign to stop the General Iron metal scrapper from moving from Lincoln Park to the east side, and calling on the city to deny the permit needed for General Iron to operate, and at the same time calling national attention to the environmental racism of that plan. We're still waiting for a final decision on the permit, as I'm sure a lot of people here already know, but Southeast Siders made the conditions that have delayed it this far and keep fighting. So I'm excited to, talk with everybody on the panel tonight about their reflections on the hunger strike, on the campaign in general, and their strategies for making change together. Like Bettina mentioned, this event came out of the work of my City Bureau fellowship team this summer. So I really have to give a huge shout out to my incredible team members, Corley J, Bridget Vaughn, and Ahmad Sales, who spent 10 weeks reporting on environmental justice on the Southeast side. They put together a mini oral history of the hunger strike and several other pieces that connected with so many of the amazing folks that you're about to hear from. So big thank you to the team. And without any further delay, I want to pass it to the panelists to introduce themselves. Yesenia, would you like to start?
So I had a feeling I was going to be first. Hi, everyone. I am Yesenia Chavez. I'm born and raised Southeast Sider. I am from South Chicago, which is the best neighborhood in the 10th ward, if you ask me. I'm a current pre-med student pursuing a degree in neuroscience, and I was a Michael Reese Foundation Scholar along with the medical organization with Latino Advancement, and I completed some research last year on the impacts of air pollution on mental health outcomes for Latina children. So I'm really excited to be able to just be amongst the same space with you all and see how we can move forward as a collective and get some good things done around Chicago.
Who wants to go next? Trinity?
Hi, my name is Trinity Colon. I'm 18 years old and I'm currently a senior at George Washington High School, the high school that was located right near General Iron's site that they plan to move to. I am currently the NRDC's 2021 Midwest Youth Ambassador, and I also work with ASSET, Alliance of the Southeast, on the Youth Leadership Council, Oscar. And yeah, I'm just an environmental justice activist and also a community organizer for the Southeast side. I live in South Deering, but I call South Chicago my home as well. And I go to school on the east side, so I'm pretty connected with the Southeast side. I've lived here my whole life too. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk. I'm also excited to listen and learn.
Oscar, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next. Hola, hola. I go by Oscar Sanchez. He, him, él. Proud, resident of the Southeast side. I've grown up in Hegewisch community, and I just love the Southeast side. Every time I talk about the Southeast side, I can't stop smiling. But the work we do here is because we love this community. So I'm really proud to say that I work for Alliance of the Southeast. The director for Youth and Restorative Justice Programming there, alongside a co-founder for the Southeast Youth Alliance, and also one of the co-founders for the Southeast Mutual Aid Collective that created here during these times of the pandemic. And overall, just really happy to be here and share the space of these amazing organizers, and just happy to share this platform.
Does that leave me? Hello, everybody. I'm Jade Maison. I'm originally from South Deering, now currently an East Side resident. I went to George Washington High School, and I have a bachelor's degree in anthropology, and I taught junior high for a long time. I'm also part of the Southeast Environmental Task Force, the Coalition of AMPECCO. I'm an Illinois ambassador to the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And I am proud to be a co-founder of the Rebel Bells, which is a girls organization for girls of color. And we have a social justice framework. So right from the get-go, we've been trying to stay active in the community. And we're home growing our own activists, our own community leaders, and quite proud of that. And I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of you for those intros, and amazing to hear even more about all the work that you're doing. we are going to move to a quick icebreaker so that you can meet someone else in the audience before we jump into the panel. So we're going to go into breakout groups, and please share your name and why you came to the event with the person you're in a breakout group with. If you're watching on Facebook right now, feel free to share why you came in the chat, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had a good time connecting with someone in your breakout room. We are going to head into the panel in a second once we have all of our panelists back in the spotlight view. I'm excited to start the conversation. All right, let's get started. If you have any questions as you're watching, you can put them in the chat, and we will try our best to get to them later during a Q&A portion toward the end. So, keep putting in your questions, and we'll come back to them and definitely pay attention to them. But to start with some of our questions for the panelists, my first question is, what was the process like to gather folks to organize against General Iron? How did you convince people to get involved and to dedicate their time and energy to this? If anyone feels really moved by this question, go for it. Otherwise, I'll pick someone.
Yeah. I'd be happy to start the conversation and let folks add on to anything I miss. But the way that the Fight for General Iron came about was really I think many folks from the Southeast side know it's always rapid response, right? It's always one developer after another, and there's always people fighting. And the question is not always how do you convince people to join the fight? It's asking people to continue the fight and asking people when will this end? And it was something very I look at this pandemic, and I don't like saying, this beautiful outcome, right? But what we saw is a lot of solidarity at the beginning of the pandemic when folks came together from different organizations that said, we need to create some mutual aid to, help our community members. And that's how we created the Southeast Response Collective. And when, the murder of George Floyd happened, there's uprisings here in the Southeast side, and community members felt really compelled to come together and uplift the messages that Black Lives Matter, and making sure that we address that here in this community where many times that racism hasn't been addressed in the Southeast side. And what happened from there is, we then questioned, there's racism, and then we kind of went on for environmental racism and wanting to hold the local alderwomen accountable. So a lot of folks from that mutual aid joined. And then again, shout out to Jade and all the OGs that kind of joined and said, hey, we love this energy you're having, and, we're pushing forward. So we had a lot of those assets from, building that community from the mutual aid. And then we had all those previous assets from all the OGs saying, hey, here we are, let's continue this fight together.
Yeah, that's huge. Trinity, a question for you. Can you talk about how students and youth got involved in the fight and what impact you think that had?
I think youth getting involved in the fight against General Iron was really impactful. I think that it showed not only the city, but also, not only the city's government, but also the rest of Chicago, that this was a big deal to our community, so much as we got 14 to 18-year-olds involved in this, fighting for the right to breathe in their homes, but also at their school. I think it hit another level when it wasn't only just residential areas, and recreational fields and parks and baseball fields. This was a school community as well. It wasn't just a community for homes. So I think that was really impactful. And I think getting youth involved was really, and to echo on what Oscar said, it's not educating people. For me, it was helping other youth and also myself realize what we had been conditioned to believe was acceptable for us, that it was acceptable for this serial polluter to come relocate next to our school, and polluting our lungs and our families' lungs and the people that we love. And I think really just trying to open our eyes and see that it was always there. Like when I was a kid, and a lot of other youth, a lot of my friends and my peers also expressed this, that like we would have vans like come for treating asthma, and it would take about like 50% of my elementary school classes every month, every few months or so, like every season when asthma attacks started. And me growing up knowing, I thought asthma was so common. A lot of my peers did too. So I think really educating, it wasn't educating if we knew it. We just needed to realize it and kind of like step up to the plate and join the fight that would ultimately lead to this beautiful space right here.
I want to give love to Trinity, just to mention this part, is that, you know, I think it's really important that we empower youth, because they, again, rapid organizing, they went from fighting and making sure that their schools no longer have police officers or SROs. So they went from that fight, showing all our love and support, and then we followed their lead, and then afterwards they're like, hey, we want to fight more, like we want to fight for our lives, because this is what we deserve. We deserve better livelihood, better treatment in our communities, we deserve respect, and put our name, like they were like, put respect in my name, right? So you just see how like youth, like again and then again and again, like always show up, because you know that's what they're gonna do. When you let youth know the power they carry and continually carry, like they show up.
I wanted to say too, to piggyback off that, yes, the youth joining, and I consider Oscar youth too. Sorry, Oscar, I know you, but it made such an impact that after a while we had to tell people we are no longer organizing new hunger strikers. That after a while, companies and organizations were staging their own one-day solidarity strikes. So do you guys remember? I remember like 700 at one point. Am I wrong with that number? It was a phenomenal number that I couldn't even grasp at how many people were just willing to stand in solidarity with us, even if it was just for one day. And because it wasn't glamorous, you know, people signed up, you know, at first they thought it was going to be, oh, yay, we're going to join the team. No, it was hard. We were putting our lives on the line. We were putting our health at risk, and we didn't want that to happen to anybody else on a whim. And I think without like the medical team in place, the nurses who came to check on us. And once that was in place, I didn't have a hard time signing on because it was well organized. And that's all I needed to be convinced, because I was on at the get-go. Hunger strike, I knew that it needed to, well, we all agreed that we needed some kind of escalation, and this proved to be something that worked for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to hear more. Maybe Yesenia, if you want to talk about this, about the choice of the hunger strike as a tactic, because I know that there have been and continue to be many other, you know, parts of the campaign and tactics that you've used.
Yeah, thanks, Olivia. I think to continue from the first question to kind of lead into this one, my experience is a little bit different in mobilizing the community, because like as soon as I got wind about what was going on with General Iron, and I knew where they were going to be located across the street from a high school where my sister currently attends, I was like, how does this even make sense? And then I kept digging into it, and I kept looking into the story, because I'm like, okay, I can't start advocating for something and not have a clue what what's going on, because then I just look crazy. So the education started there. If you do your own research, you start to put the pieces together, you kind of follow where the money is, follow where the story's going, and then you realize that it's blatant environmental racism in the aspect that this company, General Iron, is being moved from a neighborhood on the north side that's incredibly affluent, and it's basically being dumped in our neighborhood, right? So that's where it started. And then from there, I started to think about, okay, well, what can I do to help? Because I was sitting in my room, there's so many other things going on. The pandemic had hit everyone so hard. We were in quarantine. And then on top of that, we're getting this news that we're getting a polluter that's coming into our neighborhood in the middle of a respiratory pandemic, you know? And to kind of have that floating around in your head and be quarantined was crazy. Like it caused so much anxiety, so much hurt, so much confusion, questioning of your own worth, right? Because you're thinking about your elected officials and what they're put in place to do. And it's basically to be concerned for the public's health, and that just didn't equate to what was actually happening. So immediately, how can we get everybody else involved? How can we spread the word? How can we educate people on this? Because I mean, even to this day, a lot of people in our neighborhood don't know what's going on. That's how hard of a challenge it's been, because people in the 10th ward are conditioned to believe that these are the kind of jobs that we deserve on this side of town, because our community from, I would say, the early 1900s up until the early 2000s was basically thriving because of this steel industry. But once they packed up, we were basically left to formulate our lifestyles around this toxic land. And that's it. And all we deal with now is just companies that are vultures that are coming in saying that they have jobs for us. And that's all they really have to offer. So I started to join different organizations, join protests to hold people accountable in public offices, would knock on doors to get neighbors to sign letters so they feel like they're important. Because a lot of people are like-minded with what our messaging is, right? Is that we deserve clean air, we deserve the right to breathe, we deserve good, clean jobs, and we shouldn't have to compromise our health to have economic flourishment, economic advancement, economic opportunity. So being able to talk to people on the ground was huge, right? Because you have that connection there with people, and it built trust because they're putting a face to a name, and they're like, okay, this person actually cares. So it started there, and then you go to social media, and I would get clowned on our Facebook community page because people were just like, well, nobody cares, like you're wasting your time. And it was hard. It was really hard to convince people that like, this isn't normal. It's not something that we should necessarily consider for accepting whatsoever. And, people actually do care about your health and are trying to make a difference. So from there was a huge process of holding the Democratic Party, basically democratic processes, or upholding the democratic processes in Chicago, going to town halls, writing letters, leveraging different sources of, leveraging different communities, like the local school council, like our high schoolers, like our parents, and nothing was giving, nothing. And the city was just basically giving us a runaround. And I think we realized this in the final town hall that was just a hot mess, where we basically felt like we were just telling them our feelings and telling them that we didn't want this permit. We presented the science, we presented signatures, we presented everything that you can think of. And the city was just basically like, okay, great, we'll have a decision in January. And to us, like, this isn't a decision, this is our lives. This is people's health. This is Trinity's future. This is my sister's future. These are the future of our children that I can potentially have. It's not just a decision, it's our livelihood. So feeling that pressure literally in our chest, because it's not just like we were dealing with General Iron, we're dealing with the pandemic too. So on top of that, we're scared of dying while we're trying to combat this polluter. And we were just like, you know what? We gotta do what we gotta do, because this by all means cannot happen. And that's when you saw the announcement with Oscar, Brianna, and Chuck. And that's how the hunger strike started. And then I joined a week later, or 4 days later.
Yeah, and then definitely I want to echo those words that, talking to community members was hard. And that's why, leaning again on the advice and the knowledge of like those before us, it's like, let's do community visionary sessions. Let's also do our own community town halls. Let's lead our own sessions where we can educate our community members, because there are people that supported this, but then there's people that are till this day, they're like, General Iron is a recycling company. It's green, right? And we also see that greenwashing. And I think for the folks that don't know that, what greenwashing is when you present something with the narrative that is going to create something uplifting for the environment or the nature in your community, and it's going to allow you to disregard any type of safety. That is the marketing used with greenwashing. And I just want to echo those words, like, we're fighting for our lives. And I think that's what convinced many people. And many people would be hesitant to say this, but like we can say this firmly. It's a civil rights issue because we're fighting for our lives. We are fighting to breathe. Where in this country are we supposed to say, where is it normal to say we're fighting to have clean air? Where is it normal to say our life expectancy difference is 30 years compared to the North Side? Like, where is this normal? And it's literally not just fighting for our air, our quality of air, it's actually being able to live, because we see so many people have passed away during this pandemic because of respiratory issues, and then they wanted to push another company here, and it's just sad. And it's always fighting against those standards and that status quo. But we do it. We do it because no one else is going to be there with us.
Yeah, I feel like that status quo and the number of fights against pollution and against reinforcing the status quo on the Southeast side has come up a lot in what all of you have been saying. And I'd love to hear more from you, Jade, about how the coalition built on some of those previous fights against polluters in the area.
So you've heard mention already about going to City Hall, doing protests, community meetings. We did a lot of community meetings. We've also collaborated with lawyers from Northwestern, from universities, even out of state, who were willing to do some research and some data accumulation about the manganese fight that we had been on before that. And before that, it was Pet Coke and the Koch brothers. So when you hear Oscar and Yesenia talk about, this cycle of bad actors and polluters coming into our neighborhood, this has been going on for generations. And it's such a staple in our community that a lot of residents just kind of forget it's there until it starts to smell. And then what can they do about it? So that's why education is a huge part of what we're trying to do. What are these? We had to do the legwork a lot on almost everything. Like all the data, it's because we collected it, or we got somebody to help us collect it. Interpreting the data, we found those doctors and scientists and things like that. The city, the government, they did not participate in any of that. They're willing to use the tools that we came up with and that we shared for their own agendas, but they really are just picking and choosing what off the works of our backs, of what the community has done. Yes, we had some lawyers, but on a whole, as a whole, we're not all in law school. We're not scientists. We're not doctors. We're moms. We're students. And we did this for the love of our community. And we I don't want to sound conceited or anything like that, but I'm so proud of us, and I'm not going to let anybody not know that we had to invent stuff. We had to take it back and dissect things and then start all over again, as far as organizing what works here, what works for this community, what works for people for Black and Brown people. We had to adjust a lot of things in a lot of ways, and it's gone over the course of years, because even before this OG, there were other OGs, and it's a learning process. And I'm so excited to see Trinity and the other young people who are learning this a lot sooner than we did, and have a lot more energy and a lot more, and just newer ideas about, their generation, because that's ultimately, I make a joke and I was like, I'm on my way out. I'm in my 50s. Like, it's all on you. But I gladly do it. I gladly do it for the next 7 generations. And I'm so proud and happy and hopeful when I see the youth involved.
I love that. On the note of the learning process and like acknowledging what you figured out through this process, Trinity, is there something that you learned from this process, or one thing that you've learned from this process that you still think about a lot? At any point in the kind of getting involved?
I think the biggest thing, and it's not like about, well, it is about activism, but it's not about like fighting, and it's not about protesting, it's not about rallying, it's not about making speeches, writing articles, or even being in panels. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from our fight against General Iron is how to build and how to love your community. And that has been so crucial and keeping me going in those moments where I feel burnt out, where others feel burnt out. And I really just appreciate like spaces being like, even with people on this panel, like spaces have been created like where we can rely on each other, and we can talk to each other about what's going on. If it's not just organizing, like we're actually being neighbors, and really relying on each other for support and giving it to each other and giving each other love, which is resistance, definitely. The city does not want us to unite, because the people united will never be divided. And I think that they know that. And I think that that has just been the best thing, is the unity that has come from this. I feel so connected to a lot of organizers as well. And then going on to what I've learned, and I know a lot of other youth organizers have learned, I think I represent them well in saying that, but like learning from OGs like Jade, like shout outs to Olga, to Peggy Salazar, and I mean, Oscar and Yesenia are youth in my opinion, but also just a little bit older youth. Has been really nice too, because it's generational. It's generational trauma as well. And I think that this community, and also other communities, but this is the close one to me. I think that we can all really relate to each other, and it's really rare to kind of have this situation be happening to you and your family and like your friends. So it's been really nice to have community and unity in this fight.
Olivia, if I can just add to what Trinity's saying, because I learned a lot from the youth in the neighborhood. And I think the lessons that I learned from the youth, I will take with me for the rest of my life. And the biggest one is you can't ask them to show up if you're not giving them anything to work with. You can't ask youth to come out and advocate and speak and protest if you're not educating them, because you're just setting them up for failure. You're burning them out. You're taking advantage of their energy, and you're taking time away from their youth for something that adults cost, and that's not fair. So Trinity and George Washington High School students and just youth in the 10th Ward in general, and other youth organizations in Chicago like Good Kids Mad City, Gage Park Latinx Council, are phenomenal. But when you're an adult, you have to understand that nurturing connections with children are literally buffering the effects that these traumatic systems are causing. And without that, you're just playing into exploiting these same processes. So I think if anything, that was my biggest lesson from the youth, is like, you can't just use them and then call them when you need them. Like you call them when you need them, but you show up whether they need you or not. You got to be there. And it shouldn't all just be heavy.
I want to answer that because I think we don't give youth enough credit, and I don't think we understand the power youth have, because youth have absolutely as much power as anybody else in our campaign and decision making. Is because we have to push that. Intergenerational spaces must make youth feel that they are involved and they are who they are. And for me, two of the biggest things that I've learned is the hard one is that youth will look at other people and say, and if we're working ourselves and exploiting ourselves individually because we say like we have to keep organizing, keep going organizing, they're going to do the same. And anyone else in the group's going to do the same. So it's always setting that, you know, however you want a space to be, you kind of set that example and you set that atmosphere. And you don't, if you don't want youth, if you are preaching and saying, don't exploit youth, or in general, like you're exploiting youth, right? Like it's about creating an environment where we're not exploiting ourselves too. And I think that's what I've really learned from youth. And pushing that further, it's that youth are honestly the solution about visioning our community outside of capitalism, because youth, their ideas, we've been conditioned so much throughout the years to live in this society the way we do, exploiting people or thinking about ourselves as individuals. But as Trini said, like, she's like, I learned community. This is my community. I do things with community. And people having that mindset at her age, right? Compared to people my age, or Jade's age, or Yesenia's age, right? People don't think that way. And that's why I say all the time, we have to follow the lead from youth, because it's through their vision that we're actually going to be liberated and actually have those ideas that let us be together as people, not just as people being exploited for profit or exploiting one another for organizing, but actually being community.
It's so beautiful to hear like who you all talk about like being in community together. We're actually at the point when we're going to open up to audience questions, but we have, you know, another 10 minutes to keep talking. So if you are in the audience and you have questions, now is the time to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll keep, you know, tossing you all a few more questions, but would love to hear from the people who are here too.
Hi, I have a question. What is the, oh, sorry. You go ahead.
No, your question's important. Please ask away.
I think I was going to ask, what's the number one way to get involved and help stop General Iron? I mean, I feel like I want to be involved. I just don't know where to start. And I'm hoping others feel this way too.
Hit me up. I got you.
You just took the first step.
yeah, literally. The first step is asking. But there are a ton of ways, and it's really important for us to kind of gauge like what your capacity is and what your interests are, and like what you want to pursue. Because some people love being, you know, on the mic. Some people love being at protests. Some people love making signs. Some people love protesting through art. Some people love protesting through writing. Some people love creating educational content to share with the community, helping with town halls, anything like monitoring the chats. So there are a ton of options. It's really just what works for you and where you're at right now. Because everybody has a ton of things going on, and the pandemic isn't over. It's still very, very much at the forefront of all of our lives. So I would definitely recommend getting in touch with anybody that's on the panel today. I can drop my email. Feel free to get in touch with me whenever. I'd love to connect and then just kind of see where you're at with everything, what your interests are. Because General Iron isn't the only thing going on in the neighborhood too, you know? So I would love to just kind of plug you in with other things going on as well. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, one actually question on that. You know, like you just said, there are other developments in the neighborhood. There are also other developments that have drawn a lot of protests in other parts of Chicago lately. Would you all talk a little bit about how your fight ties in with other ones that you know about? Anybody in particular feeling excited about that, Q? Jade, I think you're on mute.
Sorry.
I'll speak a little bit about that, and then somebody can maybe pick up where I leave off. But reframe that question. Will you say the question again for me?
Sure. How does the General Iron fight tie in with others on the Southeast side and environmental justice fights around the city?
So we do have a lot of in common with places like Little Village and Pilsen and things like that. And we're all related of course, unfortunately, by environmental racism, but we're also all connected in this fight together. We've been collaborating across the city with different organizations who come down for our things, and Southside people go to their things, and so there's such a spirit of solidarity right now that it has really strengthened our resolve and our fight. And so I know some of the other panelists have actually been to those actions, if you want to talk about that. But I just wanted to say collaboration with other people, and it's too bad we have that in common. we should have a lot of other things in common, like we're proud to be Chicagoans, things like that. But it's like, oh, the city has turned its back on you too. That's what we have in common. That's our connection.
I think also to add on to what Jade mentioned, a lot of the things that our communities face, Black and Brown communities in Chicago, are byproducts of capitalism. So when you think about the different things going on in these neighborhoods, you think about environmental racism, you think about social injustices, they go hand in hand, right? Because if there's no justice with the environment, then how can people have justice? If their external environment isn't nourishing, it's not healthy, lack of funding, right? So I think the common issue that we're all facing is oppression from people that are upholding capitalistic systems. And like I said, whether that be something social, whether that be something with the environment. So I think in that sense, the way that we relate is we just don't want to deal with this anymore. It's not fair. We're not here to prove our worth to anyone because we know who we are. We're here to tell you that this is wrong and that this is going to change. And that's that hunger that we all have. Because it's not like, like people love to doubt our intelligence, like capitalists, right? And say that we're using pseudoscience and XYZ, but they have yet to refute any of the data that we can bring forward. Mm-hmm. And as long as we can all unite and mobilize as one, they're never going to be able to do it. And the only thing they're going to be able to have as a talking point is that they're going to bring jobs. But realistically, these jobs aren't for people like us. $80,000 a year, right? For what, say 10 positions? Okay, great. Your executives are making double that, and you're paying fines in air pollution violations that are triple and quadruple that. So, it's just about passing the information and the education that we collect as communities along to one another, not gatekeeping because of the hurt that we're having, and just really understanding that the common goal here is to identify who the oppressors are in certain situations, and they're not always white. I'll tell you that. And I think that was the biggest shocker that I had to deal with this year. They're not always white. Identifying who the oppressors are, uniting as one, leveraging our different resources, upholding mutual aid as a source of community, and really, really pushing forward, whether it be inch by inch or foot by foot, to make change that's actually sustainable for the communities that have been exploited and that have been abused for generations in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a question in the chat from Ren. How has the community been able to push through and continue organizing through the pandemic?
I can speak a little bit. I think the first thing that came to my mind is hope. Kind of giving, I feel like as a youth leader in the movement, like trying to lead other youth and mobilize them as well. Getting a lot of hope from our OGs kind of in the fight, and really just relying on each other, seeing what's worked in the past and trying to keep doing that. Because it's very easy to get burnt out in this kind of work and just feel down on yourself and about the situations and about the way the city's treating you. But then it's also really easy to kind of like look, it's kind of easy to text Oscar and be like, hey, like I really need to talk to somebody. Like I really need help organizing this, because we actually this year, Youth of Washington students, we had around 530 estimated we wrote a demand letter to our alderwoman, Sue Garza of the 10th Ward, and we had around 530 students sign on that letter in 2 days, going around like through lunch periods, like nonstop, like as was said earlier, rapid organizing, like fast, which can burn you out. But like luckily, the day we were there to kind of deliver those, deliver all these signatures, these handwritten signatures of around 530 students, and Washington has about 1,400. So it was really nice to like kind of just call Olga, call Oscar, and just have a bunch of people show up and be like, we're here to drop youth off like at your alderwoman's office, like we're here for you. I think that is what keeps me going. And I mean, I think it's kind of vice versa, for everybody. Like we all keep each other going. And I think that's really important when you're organizing, when you have any sort of activisms. You can't do anything alone. And that's what gives hope, because when you do something alone, that's when you kind of get in your head and stop having hope.
Yeah, that was really good, Trinity. I just want to also make mention that logistically we had a pivot. You know, we're having this community meeting on Zoom, and you know, a lot of things where we were making headway was in-person things, and so we did have to pivot. But just like Trinity and everybody here will attest to, without each other, without community, without self-sacrifice, you know, for our community, we probably would not have lasted this long. But that's in our heart. That's you know, that's where we choose our willpower, you know, to create and design and to build and for each other and for everyone, you know, inclusively. So yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to see if I can add one part, if possible.
Okay, real quick, and then we have one last question from the Facebook Live viewers. Shout out to them.
Definitely. So real quick, three real quick things. One, it's a pandemic. Have grace for yourself. You're surviving a global pandemic. If you're in a Black and Brown community, and if you are Black and Brown or BIPOC, right, you give yourself grace, right? These safety nets we have are very different than other folks, right? And organizing during this time, you got to definitely learn technology. Exactly what Yesenia is saying. We had to struggle and learn Zoom functions. We had to learn how to even do a Facebook Live from Zoom. And shout out to our comms team that consisted of Ivan, Chris King, and Carlos Enriquez. They're the ones that held it down and helped us learn a lot of those how to really push those voices out on media. So those are three really key things. Give yourself grace. Learn the new technologies and tools for Zoom, and learn how to do a Facebook Live. And definitely, you know, social media is a tool that, you know, will really help. In learning those algorithms, it's kind of hard, but it really does help every time.
That is a great list. And speaking of Facebook Live, the question we have from Facebook Live is, when Jade was talking about building tools and data, she mentioned collaborating with scientists. How did she find and bring in these collaborations, and were the scientists Southeast Side neighbors who are already involved or linked with environmental justice orgs?
So I personally did not find them. I am a part of an organization. And so there are many, many people involved who are not, you know, in your face right now. So we had the University of Kentucky, the University of Illinois, the University of Chicago, plus a lot of other national organizations like Moms for Clean Air, the Poor People's Campaign, because we have a large network. We were able to plug in, and to be honest, a lot of those people came to us and said, you know, we have this software that if we can track the air monitors. So, you know, when the wind gusts go up to, I think it was 7 miles an hour, it was more likely to throw around pet coke and manganese and everything else, so that the community would then get a text alert saying, you know, make sure you put your mask on. And this is before the pandemic. Make sure you cover your mouth and limit your outdoor activities because there is a high volume of heavy metals in the air right now. So, and that was those were Chicago hackers. I don't know if I was supposed to say that or not, but they came to us and said, we have these tools. We think you can use them, and then we found a way how to, and so a large network that helped. Also, like things like this, like after this, because we put ourselves out there, and I do want to say being on camera is not comfortable for me, but I choose to put myself out there because the more people who see this, the more either people are going to join us in our fight. Maybe they have tools in their arsenal that they're like willing to gift us or let us use for the betterment of everybody, not to exploit anybody or anything like this, but to save lives. And some people are willing to do that. And some people are willing to dedicate, all of their federal funding for their grants to help a community that's not even in the state. They just still do it, because that's their science. And nobody else is doing it. Nobody's coming to our rescue but ourselves. And if we can get help with that, that is awesome. Like that's what's going to propel us and spread this power that we've gained.
Wow.
I can just add to just what Jade mentioned, because I think a big portion of the science that we have in the 10th Ward, we actually had to become scientists ourselves. It was a struggle, and it was a big decision into why I'm pursuing my field of study in neuroscience, was because pollution is incredibly damaging to our brain, right? And you think about it, and you think about General Iron being located across the school, and you're like, why would it make sense to have something that pollutes our brains right across the street where you're sending children to develop? That doesn't make sense. It's a literal oxymoron. So I wasn't put in a position where I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about this, but I know this is wrong. So I just kept reading, and I kept reading, and I kept reading. And a lot of the articles I came across, I was intimidated because it was just so dense. But you keep going because it's a necessity, and it's basically a means of whether or not we could potentially have a different lifestyle in the 10th Ward, and whether or not Trinity will have to continue doing this for 20 years of her life, or whether she's going to have to do it until the end of this campaign and policy can be put in place where she can actually enjoy the rest of her life and not have to do this, right? So you have to become these scientists. You have to be secure in yourself and your ability and your neuroplasticity. You have to depend on your neuroplasticity and be open to not understanding something, but be open to the idea that you can, as long as you keep applying yourself. So there was that. There was literally us becoming our own scientists. There was George Washington High School presenting their own science to their own peers, to their own teachers. There was us leveraging chemistry teachers, biology teachers from George Washington High School, telling us the directions of the wind coming from southwest to northeast, literally in the atmosphere where George Washington is going. And then there's also the partnership with universities, right? We have partnerships with UIC. We have different support systems from Northwestern as well that are fabulous with the technical language of these different permits and other legalities. And I think what I respect the most from the people that we currently collaborate with is that they are very much approach situations like General Iron from a lens of, we're here to support. We're not here to look like a savior for the community. We're here to give you what you need so you can thrive. Mm-hmm. And I think with universities, especially in the city, people love to study neighborhoods like the 10th Ward. People love to study disparities. People love to study why Black and Brown people in Chicago have to suffer so much. And people love to publish those numbers. But then once those numbers are published, then what? You're just reminding us of what our life is already like. You're not giving us anything new because we're already living this day to day. So I think a standard that we've also learned is that you're not just going to come into our neighborhood and treat us like guinea pigs. You're going to come, you're going to work, and we're going to get an outcome out of this. And we basically had to kind of push that ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I really hate to break up this conversation because it's been so insightful, but I want to make sure that we have time to get to the breakout groups and activity that we have planned for you all. So I'm going to pass it back to Bettina, but thank you so, so much to all of you. It's been amazing to hear from you tonight.
Woohoo! Thanks, everyone. That was amazing. And if you want to stick around and chat with the panelists, they'll also be in the breakout rooms. I think we're going to have a really great conversation to be able to talk about, what are some sources of pollution in your neighborhood? What are some things that you've been keeping an eye on? Maybe you've got an air monitor that you've been looking at and wondering, why are these levels so high? And then, where can we build power? How do we get folks together? How do we have some points of leverage to be able to change folks' minds at the city level, at the state level, to make some of that change? Is this beautiful work that folks on the Southeast side are already doing. So we are putting some links in the chat that have the activity both in English and in Spanish. Just a heads up, we had originally designed this to be printed so that we could actually hand it out. So it's actually not editable. Otherwise, everyone would just be typing at the same time. It might be a mess, but please use the document to be able to guide your conversation. And just so the folks on Facebook Live know, we're going to stop broadcasting soon. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll do one more wave to our Facebook Live friends. And if you want to see the activity, just email us at info@citybureau.org and we'll send you the activity so that you have it as well.